So I'm going to kick things off. As mentioned, my name is Alex, and I'm going to be moderating today's panel. So we're joined today by my colleagues Sonia Hogan, Helene Hockney, and Brett Cunningham. I'm going to pass over to Helene first to introduce herself.
Hi, folks, and welcome to Nearform. So yeah, Helene Hockney is my name. I'm the VP of Delivery and Engineering at Nearform. I've been here almost 5 years, but I've had a long history in delivery and in operations. So yes, I have a lot of experience doing this. But I have to say, the last 5 years working with Nearform remotely has been an absolute joy. At any moment you might hear my 2 dogs barking or my son coming home. So I think that's just part and parcel of doing working remotely and doing webinars and Zoom calls. You just don't know what's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of our experience and knowledge with you today.
Perfect. Thank you, Helene. We're also joined by Sonia Hogan, our technical director. Sonia, I'll hand over to you to say a few words about yourself.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, folks. As Alex said, I'm a technical director in Nearform. I'm here over 7 years now. I come from previous positions as CTO in a startup, company, but my main background is in development. That's where my heart is. And the last few years, I've been managing development teams here in Nearform and ensuring the delivery of our projects. So that's my main task.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sonia. And last but surely not least, we have Brett Cunningham. Brett, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. I'll start by mentioning one of the pieces of data or the results from our survey is some of the greatest global engineers on the globe, love the option of being able to work from home. And in the spirit of that, as Helene mentioned, that often means bringing the audience, bringing our colleagues into our home, into our life, our family and our pets. And sort of along those lines, I had shoulder surgery this week. So you can see my bionic arm sling that I have on here, which probably makes me look a little awkward. So bear with me if I have to shift around or look kind of funny. I appreciate it. From a career perspective, I've been in the software product design and engineering, platform engineering services space for over 15 years, from starting my own company that grew and went through a couple of acquisitions, to landing in a large publicly traded technology services company. I've worked with clients everywhere from startups building out their product or platform that enables them to go to market, all the way to Fortune 200 companies, large enterprises that are working to shift towards product-driven engineering organizations and the CIOs that are leading those efforts. Here at Nearform, I'm responsible for our Americas business, helping build out our product expertise, and just excited to have the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you all. And thank you, Brett, particularly for joining today post-surgery. It is great to have you. So at Nearform, we have been a remote first company since our inception 10 years ago. And we have been underpinned by the belief that we don't think tech talent need to move to tech hubs to have a brilliant career. We think that tech talent and talent in general should be able to work from wherever in the world they are. And what we decided to do at the tail end of 2021, at a time when, due to COVID, a lot of work practices were changing, we decided to go out and survey people to find out what is happening with tech talent in terms of what they want out of their jobs, what kind of trends we're seeing in their space, are they satisfied with their current employment situation. And we ended up surveying over 400 respondents in 6 continents. And we saw that essentially there is a very fast-paced talent market right now, and the impact of that is being felt globally. And we came out with the result that 63% of tech professionals believe that their company is going to struggle with finding and retaining talent in the next 12 months. The numbers actually got even more dramatic than that when we looked at enterprise companies with 500 plus employees. 81% of tech talent working in those companies believe that they will have a problem finding and retaining tech talent. In smaller companies, the situation was a bit different. 43% of respondents believe that their smaller size company was going to struggle with retention and hiring. The pace of change on the inside in terms of what companies offer to tech talent by ways of benefits, work processes, flexibility, and ways of working does not yet match the pace of change at which the outside world is changing. And because of that, it's more important than ever to find and retain great tech talent. And in order to do so, the boardrooms across the globe need to be speaking about what it is that companies need to do to future-proof themselves. And number one there is making sure that you are able to hire and retain the tech talent that you need to build and create digital solutions, keep your business on track, and answer your organizational problems. Now, what that's going to mean is a whole host of changes. Companies need to be looking at the entire employee life cycle from day one, the hiring process, to make sure that tech talent have a good hiring process, an interview process, an onboarding process, to the actual life cycle as an employee within the organization to make sure that employees are in a culture that fosters learning and development, that they're being supported by management, that they're working on projects that interest them, and then all the way to the offboarding section. Tech talent need to have a good experience when they're leaving a company as well. It's an environment, it's an industry that people speak to one another, and the entire employee life cycle is very important. On top of that, today, the expectation of a competitive salary for tech talent is pretty much a given. Employers are having bidding wars for the best talent, and in order to stand out, our survey found that the most important things that employers can focus on is the prioritization of learning, the building of a culture of continuous development, flexibility, both in terms of location, hours, work methods, and processes, and ultimately building a very caring culture that understands that the face of work is no longer what it was a few years ago. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can move into my very first question for Sonia. And that's going to be, COVID aside, why is it that you think we are seeing these trends towards tech talent looking for more flexible work options?
Thanks, Alex, firstly. I think for me, it's a trend that's always been there. And I really think that the voices in support of it are just getting louder and louder. From my experience, tech talent has long since known the advantages of remote working and the efficiencies that we can gain from it. But now, since COVID, we have a real world example that we can refer to and say, look, see, it worked. We kept producing, we adjusted, we delivered, it can work. And the obvious benefits of working from home, having flexible hours for school runs and dentist appointments and stuff, it's great, but it does make my life so much easier, but there's more to it. The reality for tech talent, I think, is not just that I don't need to be in a traditional office environment, but also it actually slows me down. I'm less productive. It can be detrimental to my team to be in a traditional office environment. Our work is so mentally taxing and conceptual that being able to control our working environment, set our focus hours according to our body clocks and our energy levels, have some level of control over the outside noise and interruptions, little dogs ignored, they're okay, we welcome them. But like being able to access my own snacks, little things like this actually make me far more productive. So it makes sense that we should all be open and communicating on this. I see this as tech talent saying, hey, here's the things that will make it easier for me to do the things you're asking me to do, And it's a combination of all of the things that enables us to be productive, but still manage our stress levels and enjoy our work. So it makes sense to me that more people are taking control and they're pushing for it and using, as I said, the real world example that we've kept building and producing and delivering while everybody was working from home for the last 2 years.
You touched on something that, it's a taxing job, especially for tech talent. And a lot of companies that aren't tech companies employ a lot of tech talent. So, Ellen, what advice would you give to a company that might not be a tech company, but that has a lot of tech talent, that is facing growing pains in terms of engaging and retaining with their large population of tech talent?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Alex, to be honest. It's such a competitive market at the moment. Um, and I love what Sonia said there about making time, having snack time and having that. It's so true. But it is a tough market. It's very competitive. So like even trying to attract good tech talent, as good as we are at it in Nearform, it's still challenging. And our talent director would agree with me. I think that you have to adjust your thinking, trying to attract the right kind of talent. Before the pandemic, we were always remote working company. So I think we found it so much easier because we were across multiple locations. Like location really wasn't a factor. Then when everyone started working remotely, it became a little bit more competitive even for us. So we had to up our game yet again to attract the right kind of talent. So despite the obvious things, and I'm going to assume here that, when you look at even your hiring strategy. So if you're trying to attract good talent in, look at where are you trying to hire people? Is location a factor? Are you looking for contractors? Are you looking for employees? That can sometimes impact on where you can hire people. But look at also, if I'm offering the remote working option, is that embedded in everything you do as part of your work? It's not just, now and again, because half of my team are in the office and the other half are at home. Let's make sure that it's in everything you do. Every thought you have, consider I'm working remotely for this. So and that comes across in your job specs, in your ad campaigns, even in your onboarding, like you mentioned at the beginning there, Alex, like onboarding is so important. Like I'm not going into an office anymore. But I do remember working for a company in Dublin and doing that walk of shame through an open plan office on day one with our HR person, 5 or 6 of us trundling through going, hello, hello. You don't need to do that anymore. Thankfully, I'd much rather do it on Zoom. But like, how do you make people feel welcome? Like send them a welcome pack, send them some swag if you have it. Get your CEO to welcome them on Slack in the first week when they join. Buddy them up with someone who's been in the company for a while. So the worst thing that's what you do to, I think, retain talent, Alex. There's a lot of that. I mean, we can talk about benefits package, we can talk about training, which is important too, and having a good, interesting piece of work to work on and the right environment. But actually having that culture of remote working, having it as part of everything you do all the time and not as an afterthought, I think that's the key to it all, and really getting that right.
And Alex and Helene, I'll kind of add to that just briefly. Everything Helene just said, if I were to summarize in 2 or 3 words, means giving people a home, right? And that means connecting to them personally. If there are smaller groups, the way you organize your talent into groups that are connected, that have the tools and the ability to share successes, share challenges, the ability to go crowdsource expertise to solve those hard challenges. Those types of things make people kind of feel a home, right? And connected to each other, whether they're in a physical office or studio or remote. And I think enabling a culture that does that is how, you especially retain, right, talent and become a home for the best talent.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, we
absolutely.
both touched on culture, and in our survey, 80% of respondents said that when looking at a new role, culture would be one of the main factors that they would look at when deciding whether or not to join a company. And on top of that, 84% of the respondents that we polled said that learning opportunities were critical to making a decision. So they would prioritize joining a company that could offer them learning opportunities and a good culture. Now, obviously, learning opportunities are more than just, giving people £500 a month or a year to attend a training course. Sonia, what would a company that's looking to foster a development-oriented culture, what can they do in terms of initiatives to make it a holistic approach to learning and development?
For me, there's 2 sides to the approach. So there's providing the equipment, the development courses, materials, resources, and then there's ensuring it's a safe space to learn and ask for help and actually develop. So if I look first at providing the development courses and the materials, for me, any kind of program or structure around this, it has to start at onboarding and continue regardless of an individual's performance. It's not performance related, it's progression related. It's about how long you've been in Nearform and how much investment we're doing with you to bring you along on our journey and ensure that you're developing with us. It's not about correcting behavior or punishing behavior. So bringing it in from the start and having it there consistently, as opposed to introducing it out of the blue, it ensures people just don't assume, oh, is she asking me to go on this course because I've done something wrong, or is she actually trying to make me better and make my life easier, you know? So it's, you know, you need to let them know that the resources and the things are there before they actually need it. And similarly then, on the other side, you have the psychological safety. That it's a phrase that we throw it around so much, but really it's ensuring it's okay to be vulnerable. If I don't feel safe to be vulnerable and admit that I don't know everything, then I can't learn. I can't ask you questions. I can't ask for your opinions, and I can't be, you know, truthful in what I don't know. That has to be really safe, and it has to be led. So, you know, from a leadership or management perspective, you have to ask yourself, how do you react to questions? Do you encourage them or criticize them? Do you dig deeper and, you know, are you fascinated by the question you've been presented with? Or do you just give them a one-word answer and send them on their way? Because that will dictate whether somebody is going to come back and ask more questions and learn more and develop more with you. And then also looking at your own behavior as a leader or manager or member of any team. Do you ask questions? Do you ask for help? And where and when do you do that? Because if you're doing it privately, just amongst your close friends, nobody's benefiting from that. And that's all your staff are going to do, because that's what you're telling them to do. But if you're brave enough to do it amongst your peers, amongst your subordinates, or whatever word you want to use, and you're brave enough to do it publicly, then it's, you know, it's a far fairer ask to ask your teams to do the same. I think it's a lot more positive. It's a lot easier to get buy-in from everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting as well is for us in terms of, you know, having very specialized technical talent. For us, we've been doing this for 10 years, and our tech talent has on average about 10 years of experience each. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And one of the things that definitely has empowered us as a company to hire this type of tech talent has been the fact that, you know, we're remote and we can access talent that are everywhere across the globe. Now, in our survey, 71% of respondents said that remote work is either very important or essential in their decision-making process on taking a new job. Now, in our client work, we come in and at times we're helping clients who are undergoing digital transformation projects and they don't have the technical expertise to do it themselves. Now, Helen, what would you give in terms of advice to a company that has a project, a digital project that they want to undertake, but they don't have the right technical talent to grow their software engineering function?
Well, I'm going to say hire Nearform, of course, but no, seriously, like we've worked with lots of clients that are, you know, either maybe they're a bank, so their core business is not software engineering. We worked with car manufacturers, that's not like their core business. So yeah, they've struggled to hire engineering staff because they're not an engineering company. So a lot of our engineering colleagues will want to go and work for big tech, or they'll want to work in a software services company like Nearform, you know, so they have lots of choice. So how does someone that doesn't have engineering culture embedded in, they're not an engineering company, how do they attract people? Well, it's going to cost you, and we've seen that it is costing you. So you're trying to get them based on a higher salary. It works sometimes, but the quality is not always there. So my advice would be find a good partner to work with. Partner with someone, and I don't mean like a recruitment agency or a body shopping vendor. Find a partner that is going to actually help you hire the right people. They're going to help you build an engineering culture. They're going to lead on technology decisions, and they're going to advise you. So you're looking for someone that's more of a partner than just like a vendor that's going to give you bodies to fill seats. You want someone that's going to help you navigate the world of open source, for example. Maybe someone that's going to help you put the right process and procedures in place, because you may not want to go strict Scrum. Please don't. But there's a compromise there, and if you don't know that, like I worked with a company a few years ago in London, and they didn't know that there was a difference between Scrum and Kanban and different kinds of ways of working, and they felt that they had to follow this strict process, which was killing them, absolutely killing them. So like a good partner will go in and tell you, okay, let's figure this out. What works for you and what works for you as a company? So, and we'll make up our own procedure here and our own processes. So I would say like it's more a case of being like partner augmented as opposed to partner or vendor led. So augment your teams with a good partner who's going to make you better.
I think there's a really interesting EY report that came out, and it showed the actual level of digital transformation projects that are being undertaken right now and that are being led by tech talent. And it came out with around 68% of CEOs that responded to that survey for EY mentioned that they were planning a major investment in data and technology, and then 61% of CEOs were planning a major new digital transformation initiative. Now, that's a massive number for this year. Brett, what would you say the risks are for, in terms of business impact for a company that is ready to undergo a digital transformation product, but doesn't have the right technical talent or processes in place?
Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time over the past few years with CIOs who are, officially trying to go through that transformation, that journey to become a more digital native or at least digital friendly enterprise, right? And it's easy to get into sort of a path or land on a path where there's a huge multi-year, hundreds of people, millions of dollars, type initiative, which I think is just so hard to execute and so hard to just get started, right? Whereas I think if you boil it down and kind of take a practitioner's point of view, there's some key things that a big enterprise can do to get on that journey or to get down that path, right? Number one, for me, I'd mentioned 3 or 4 things. Number one is starting to shift from what I would call project-driven engineering to product-driven. So many enterprises I've worked with today are spinning up projects teams, engineering teams with a finite budget, a finite scope, a finite timeline, and hoping the team delivers software within those parameters. And they need to shift to product-driven, where a product team has a continuous connection to the end user, has a budget that is aligned with the long-term delivery of that product, where the measurement of success is tied to business outcomes, things like revenue, usage, end user satisfaction, right? And so but you don't have to take all of your engineering projects and shift them to product on day one. Find a lighthouse or a place to get started, right? Number 2 is, building a culture and an org model where the teams have a true home. We talked about this earlier, right? Where your teams are, empowered to make decisions, where they feel connected, et cetera, and can crowdsource or solve problems together for the business, right? I think, number 3 is, providing challenging and impactful work, leveraging modern technologies, right? Starting to identify a technology stack that today's best talent wants to work on is a big part of bringing in that talent and starting to go on that journey towards transformation. And I think, frankly, as part of attracting and retaining talent, something that's non-obvious, I think, for today's large enterprises is the importance of what I would call talent marketing. Not just talent acquisition, but marketing and showing the market publicly the sort of digital friendly environment and culture that they've built. I think is a crucial part of enabling them to attract the right talent and go on this transformation. So, I really recommend, in summary, bringing sort of a practitioner's point of view, get started small, start transitioning to a product mindset, and modern technologies, and show the world that you're doing that, to start on that, to start on that path. And, I've had the pleasure recently of talking to some great business leaders at companies like Equifax and Cox Automotive and others that are successfully going on this journey because their leadership has recognized the importance of, doing some of these things that start to change the culture and the talent to become more almost digitally native in a legacy enterprise environment that has decades of history.
I think that's quite interesting. And earlier on, we were debating the use of the term outsourcing in a different discussion, outsourcing tech talent. And it's a term that I know people don't like. And very often, when people think about digital partners, that they're just out getting tech talent outsourced. First of all, feel free to discuss your thoughts on the use of that term, but also how can, Brett, you touched on it a bit in terms of more than just having tech talent come in and help with a gap in knowledge, but also to help build out processes and, upskill a team. Does bringing on a digital partner provide, more benefits than just the headcount and just the technical expertise in a certain tech stack? And this, I'll aim this one at Brett because Brett, you started the discussion there, but Sonia and Hélène, please feel free to chime in on this one.
Absolutely. And Hélène mentioned a few things that are kind of part of the themes that I'd highlight here. I try as hard as I can not to use the word outsourcing because it connotates to sort of a body shop type, structure in a working relationship between an enterprise or between a client and a partner, right? And so when a client comes to me and says, I need an engineering team that looks like this, 3 engineers, quality, DevOps, et cetera, my first question is, what are you building, right? And who is the end user? And how do we custom build a team that can deliver to your business goals, right? So I think that's the mindset with which a company, right, an organization that needs talent, that needs to accelerate their product delivery, that needs, et cetera, or needs to modernize their existing applications or get better at building platforms should take, and so, and I'll take that a couple steps further. I think where I see the market going, the product engineering, the platform engineering, the data engineering market going is a change in the way that clients work with partners that I think will be very positive. Today, right, the commercial construct is for the most part time and materials driven, right? People that are getting paid, from partners where there's an hourly or a daily or maybe even a monthly sort of costs to the team or the talent, right? And I think it's going to take 2 steps in this market shift. The first is where there's accountability or responsibility on the partner and the client, the business together for building the product right. What that means is with high velocity in a structure that is consistent where confident delivery happens, right? And the commercial construct will start to shift towards expecting the partner to hit those velocity goals. Maybe it's deliver certain functionality, and there's an element of the payment, right, between the 2 parties that is driven around that. So it's sort of a pay for performance type of structure. The second step, which I think is even more mature, so from time and materials to building the product right, to a relationship where there's accountability or responsibility on the partner for building the right product. And what that means is the product that goes to market is commercially viable, whether that's driving revenue, whether that is usage or end user satisfaction, true outcome driven construct or relationships between an enterprise or a client and a partner. And here at Nearform, we're working to sort of lead the market down that path. And I think that's something I would encourage technology leaders to think about in identifying a partner that brings a product mindset, wants to custom build teams, and take some responsibility for building the product right, and ultimately building the right product, which means bringing that sort of product and design expertise as well as engineering and delivery.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Brett. I think what I find sometimes interesting when I hear the word outsource, to me, it feels like, let's just throw the problem over the wall to somebody else. You go away and fix it, and we might like what you come back with, but 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be happy with what that partner or that outsourced vendor comes back with, because you haven't engaged in the process. You haven't engaged with what they're building. Like, God knows what they're building if you're not working with them on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just from years of working with some outsourced partners in my early telecoms days. But to me, it just, like, partner is a much better word. And I see the theme across all of us saying that today. Like, you partner with someone in this day and age, you don't just pass it off. It's like, we don't do waterfall development anymore. It's all iterative, it's agile, we work together, there's a flexibility there. So yeah, I agree with you, Brett.
Yeah, great point.
It would be interesting to hear from Sonia and Elaine from the client work that you've been engaged in the past. An example of a project that both of you were working on where there was a lack of some technical knowledge on the client side. How is that type of problem approached? How, what does the client tend to want out of it? What can be delivered by a digital partner? What is the process there?
Okay, I can start. On one of my previous projects, I'm going to have to use a name. I'm going to grab Kira's name to use instead, because I can't mention names due to very tight NDAs. But Kira came to us as a client, we'll say, and she was the top of her game, really good business consultants, just absolutely world renowned at what they do, which is really enjoyable for us at Nearform to work with smart people who know what they want. And these people had a product that they had built already, version 1, really successful, but they needed to rebuild it because the performance and scalability just wasn't there. So they made the decision to rebuild in the confidence that they had everything they needed except the technical expertise. And within a couple of weeks, maybe less, they realized that we were able to give them so much more. So we came in and we built an initial proof of concept to show maybe where some of the gaps in our understanding were and in their understandings were. It does so much more than a conversation. Even just having a physical Lego thing in front of you can show you so much more about the unknown unknowns. But we worked with that client for 6 years, 7 years. They're still engaging with us at Nearform. And there's so many things I could tell you about that we changed in there. But the one thing that really sticks with me is around their release process. So they already had a product version 1 in production with hundreds of clients. And this product was being updated once every 6 months. And it was taking them about 4 months to prep for their release every 6 months. So it was just a continuous release cycle, but their clients were only getting, updates every 6 months, and then they'd spend the next 3 months fixing the update they just did, and then they'd start preparing for the next one. Within 18 months of us going in there, we had them to weekly releases, and they're still on weekly releases. And how we got there was an awful lot of relationship building and trust building with the individuals that we were working with directly. At that point, we'd very much built up the trust where we knew what we were doing. We were very good at what we were doing. We were already delivering so much for them. And a lot of it was about actually giving our partners the confidence and the materials to be able to sell these things internally. Like the individuals who we were talking to, they weren't the only people involved in the release process. So they're not the only people you have to sell it to, and you have to get on board when you want to change it. So a lot of what we did was just giving them the materials and going on internal calls with them to support them when they got questions and answering the tough questions. And I know 2 of the big changes that we made that gave them the confidence to step over the line and move to weekly releases was, firstly, we reduced the risk as much as possible. So we moved them to tiered releases. We have 3 tiers. The first changes just go out to like 5 really friendly clients that are okay if we mess it up and they're not going to go crazy on us. And then we, stagger it out to the rest of the clients over the course of 2 weeks. And secondly, we made the decision to be more than happy to press the undo button. I think sometimes we're afraid to commit to something new because we're not 100% sure we can just say, no, go back to when it was working. I'm really sorry, we shouldn't have done that, So it takes a lot of confidence to just clearly, transparently say, if this doesn't work, we roll back. And the steps for every release to roll back were always clear. That was, part of our go or no go, was part of our quality assurance on our releases. We can do whatever we want as long as we know we can go back. And everybody then just gathers, the more you do it, the easier it is. And I'm sure if you were to go and talk to the client now and ask them of the difficulty and the complexity involved with weekly releases, they would immediately tell you the difficulty and complexity involved with 6 monthly releases, because now they can see the difference. But it's hard to see that when you're on the other side.
Yeah, such a good control Z, Sonia, isn't that it? Control Z.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be afraid. It's okay.
Okay.
It's like all of our Agile and MVP. If you have to throw it out, it's not a waste. You have learned something, Yeah,
throwaway code. I love it.
Yeah.
I can give you just a quick story then about another client that, again, we're still working with, but they are, again, I can't name them, but a large, in the pharmaceutical space, a very large global company that had very old kind of IT, I suppose, and a lot of legacy systems and a lot of paperwork, so paper-based systems and processes. So we engaged with them a couple of years ago because they wanted to do a digital transformation. Like the rest of the world, they decided we need to go digital. So we put in essentially a 3-year plan with them. It sounds like a long time, but we're coming towards the end of year 2, so it's and we're making great progress. And the thing I like about this was we started out with 3 teams, 3 small senior teams. We put in some leadership in there as well, some technical leadership, so solution architects, delivery architects, and we helped them build their MVP, which is their minimal viable product. And that was their first goal. We really want to get something out there in the market. We want to show that we're capable of doing this. So reporting up to show our leaders that digital is the way to go and proving that it can be done. So that was the first ask from them. And we said, okay, well, let's show you how to do that. And we worked with them. They provided, they were the key stakeholders. They had a very small engineering team that joined our Nearform teams. So we worked together. Like there was, sometimes you wouldn't know whether they were the client engineer or the Nearform engineer. We just, it was one team approach. So that was year 1, and we helped them launch like their full product 6 months later, which they're extremely happy with. There was a huge piece of infrastructure work that needed to be done. So we were able to provide cloud platform and DevOps engineers in there to do that piece of work. But the whole time we were talking with the stakeholders about how, and their problem was, how are we going to do this on our own when you leave? Or we're never leaving, don't worry. But at some point, so the conversation started then around, okay, so let's build the plan that looks like, how do we enable you to do this on your own in this part of the business? Then we will take this approach and move it to another part of the business and repeat and do that over and over again. So what we're able to do with them is help them attract some engineering talent, help them navigate the whole DevRel world. So if you're not from an engineering background, like you're kind of, what is this? Like, who do I talk to? What are the right events to go and talk at? Like, what are the things we should be publishing and talking about? And they have great tech. So that is something that's going to help attract people in there for them. So we've helped them with their hiring and talent strategy. We've helped them with their community building. And we're still helping them with that. And we're also helping them with how they navigate open source. So that whole world of open source and what they need to do there. It's when we work with clients, we always look for a case study or a reference or testimonial, and like, you know, it's brilliant to get that. But in this case, it's actually the client is looking for us to give them the stamp of approval in the technology world. And it's remarkable, and it's wonderful to be able to do that. That because they are so open to change, they want to embrace good technology, good habits, good quality processes. So yeah, we've given them our stamp of approval. So we're helping them in the technology world to become an engineering function, to have a really solid engineering function across the global org.
It's really interesting because one of the things that we see as well is that when organizations choose, a quote unquote correct solution for a problem, and then the next task is to identify the right way to kind of build and run that solution, is a complex process, and it often requires a lot of kind of interdepartmental expertise. And a lot of organizations who have tech talent do struggle to get past that stage, and it often tends to be due to lack of internal alignment on choosing the best way forward. So and then you kind of led into my next question, which was for Brett. But aside from the obvious of, having the right expertise on either open source or kind of how to go about project managing something, what other business problems can, a digital partner come in and solve for tech talent specifically in an organization that is, struggling to reach alignment?
I think, a few things, right? As I talk to CIOs and technology organizations, there's often a challenge to connect with the business or to connect with the product owners who often sit in the business, today, where they may have subject matter expertise, business expertise, and understanding of the end user, but the ability to translate that into product requirements, a product roadmap, user stories, the fuel that the engineering teams need, that's an element that I think is a non-obvious bridge that, and a challenge that a partner could play potentially, or that they need to build, right? Even if it's just temporary, as their organization comes together into what I would call wholly formed product teams with all the skills, product design, engineering, quality, DevOps, right, to own on and deliver a product and measure that successfully. So I think, that's one element, right? I think, certainly I touched on a little bit there's a big word, right, that's being used a lot, which is digital transformation. And enterprises have these large digital transformation budgets, but it's so hard to get started. And so finding small places to get started. How do we find a lighthouse project that we can actually structure as a true product, right? How do we start to think about reorganizing our teams a bit so that they have a home, so that they can share and solve problems together? How do we change the way we measure success? I've historically thought about sort of three big pillars that an organization needs to go through in terms of modernizing the work, which is how work gets done, how product and platform teams are organized and measured; modernizing the workplace, which often means as simply as how do we figure out how to, rather than bring people into a physical central environment, how do we figure out how to bring the work to them so that we can use the best talent wherever it resides globally, right? And then the workforce, becoming a more sort of digitally first culture, right? So I think those three pillars are elements that a company needs to go on in their sort of journey towards modernization. And partner can help do that. And I really recommend partners that, I keep using the word practitioner. That means partners who aren't going to suggest multi-million-dollar, multi-year major transformation programs necessarily from the outset, but finding small ways to start down that path together in a way that starts to make an impact and then proliferates across the organization.
Perfect. Now we are running towards the end of the session. So I have one last question for the three of you. It'll be a bit of a quick fire round. What advice would you give to a company that is struggling to complete a digital project right now? Let's start with Sonia.
For me, I think I'm a broken record sometimes in rooms, because I always try to get the group to come back to what problem are you trying to solve. So often we jump ahead to solutions and how great they can be and how we can make them really pretty and really quickly, but we're not really certain that we're solving the right thing or that the solution is the right thing for the problem. And you really need to step back, spend more time on the problem, make sure everybody is clear on what it is, and learn as much about that as you can, because doing that makes the solution really obvious, and it makes it a lot easier for you to know if the person you're talking to or the company you're talking to are the right partners for you, because they'll either get the problem or they won't, but if you don't understand it, it's very difficult for you to verify where they're landing with it.
Over to Helen next.
Yeah, what Sonia said, basically. I think definitely finding the right partner. And you know what, sometimes you don't realize you're not making progress. So like if you've started your large project or whatever it is, but you're not actually making much ground, and you might feel sometimes we're going backwards, but we've spent an awful lot of budget, then maybe sometimes it's a point to go, right, maybe an external viewpoint is good. And it's very much along the lines of what Sonia is saying, because sometimes like we would work with so many clients that would come to us with a problem, and we'll get into a room and we'll do what we call our ignite workshops or ignite session. It's really a discovery piece. That's what we're doing. We're trying to, and it's not technology driven. It's what's the problem you're trying to solve, and then let's figure out, do we know what the solution is? And sometimes they will do like a 360 turn on what they thought they were trying to build and go, okay, yeah, actually that's what we need to build, not this. And then we can advise and help on how to get there and how to do it. We're not going to just say, well, we'll give you 300 bodies and we'll charge you at this rate. It's much more a pragmatic approach. Well, this is what you need to do. You don't need 40 people. Maybe you only need 10, or this is the right shape team. So I just think find the right partner that's going to be honest with you and give you good advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what comes to mind really echoes what both Sonia and Helene said. And what they said was, we've used the word project, and the question you use the word project, I don't even really use the word project. I try not to. You're building a product, you're building a piece of software that has is long-term viable and will continue to be used and made better over time by end users. And what Helene and Sonia just said is, let's make sure that's well defined. There's an understanding of the end user. And on top of that, there's a good definition of what success is, right? Whether that's, CSAT or NPS or something for that end user, whatever the goal is that ties back to business impact. And as they said, I think, they suggested finding a partner who custom builds teams, is willing to align their incentives with business success. I think that whether it's defining and building a new product, accelerating velocity on existing products that are in flight, whether it's modernizing existing legacy applications that need to be re-architected, shifted to the cloud, probably with a new front end, right? And a design system implemented. I think in all of those cases, a partner who's custom built teams to join your team on the ground and align incentives, and I think finally over time it is prioritize the talent and culture, which we've talked about. If we bring this back a little bit to our survey results, what are today's talent looking for, or are they concerned about in the employers they're working for, right? It's of course, compensation is an element of it, but it's not the only element. Feeling like they have a home, working on challenging programs and products that impact what the business that they're made for, or the end user that they're made for, having some flexibility and an option to work from home, right? Those are all things we've touched on as themes in terms of, how product and engineering organizations are organizing themselves and connecting their talent. You know, my wife happens to be a talent leader here in the Austin area, which is a decent technology hub in the US market. And so she's tracking what are the big technology employers doing with regards to their workforce. So the big ones, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Amazons, the Netflix, the Googles, you know, they're starting to move towards, some of them, you know, bringing people back into the office in a sort of mandatory, like, you know, structure. And so we'll see how that plays out, frankly, right? I'm sure they've been very diligent and thought through what that means for them, right? But we'll see if that creates an opportunity for talent, you know, for the rest of the market, because there's more flexibility given. You know, we're seeing from our survey results that some of the greatest engineers globally want some flexibility in where they work. So those are some trends that I'm watching, right, carefully, that to see how they play out, that I suggest other technology leaders watch as well, in order to inform their own decisions, in order to maybe be able to position themselves to take advantage of some of the talent that may come available from some of those moves. So those are just some thoughts. I'm meandering a little bit, but those are just some sort of thoughts on, you know, how to be successful within your enterprise and what you should be watching for in the market in terms of the talent trends that may enable you an opportunity to position yourself to become, you know, a great place for the best talent globally.
Fantastic. Now we have a few minutes left, so we have time for a couple of questions. First one that's come in is quite interesting. It's how do you convince the team on what is the best modern technology platform for a project? I'm going to hand that one over to probably Helene and Sonia to tackle.
I will first say I don't convince them. It's kind of like dropping a bomb into the middle of the room and see who will throw themselves on it. You know, you let them decide themselves. It's like one of the best forming ways of getting a team to work together. You know, as Helene referenced earlier on, we don't do strict agile in Nearform, and we approach our processes and their tools the same. We don't force them on our developers. Most of our developers are really senior. They know what they want to do. They know how to do it, and we trust them to make those decisions. And we also trust that they're mature enough to be able to come together to solve the problem and drop their egos at the door and figure, you know, choose the best solution for the problem that's in front of them.
Yeah, 100%, Sonia. It is a case of, I mean, practically speaking, what people can do is do like small, like proof of concepts. So if you want to try out, like we do a lot of kind of looking at different technologies here to see where can we use them? Are they going to be a good fit for just for the problem that we have? So I think it goes back to, again, what problem are you trying to solve? And is the tech that you're looking at really the right thing for that? Well, who knows? You could research for years and years, but there's a lot of really smart people like on different forums and stuff that can give you an opinion on that. And a lot of technologists are really happy to give you an opinion and share some feedback and answer questions for free. They don't, you know, they're not looking to be paid for this. So get out onto Twitter, get into the networks, find the right forums and stuff where you can ask these questions really openly and be very honest. Like we do it ourselves. And we've some of the best technologists in the world in our company, but we still do go out and ask for opinions, ask for feedback, and then do our own little proof of concepts to see, is this really viable?
Perfect. Now we have 5 minutes. Time for one more question, I'd say. And I have one here that reads, what is best practice in a remote company for stand-ups? I think, again, this is probably going to be one for Helene and Sonia to answer.
I would say best practice for stand-ups for me is the same as any call when you're remote. You respect the calendar, you respect everybody's calendar. You turn up on time and you finish when the call is supposed to finish. And if you still have more discussions to have, then you put another call in the calendar, or you you arrange to talk in a separate place. You respect the time and availability of the other people that are on the call. We do a simple going through what I did yesterday, what I plan on doing today, and round robin. The last person in starts it off, these kind of things. You kind of gamify it a little bit. We have done, and it can be quite fun. But there's different solutions to different problems. So I'm wondering what problem has caused you to ask that question. I'm wondering if you're going over time, if you're not getting the information that you want to get when you're on stand-ups, or where is this coming from? I know we're running close to time, so maybe you can send across some more details or whatever later through Alex. I'm more than happy to give more detailed answer to that.
I'd add one other thing, just in general. As companies have shifted to a remote working structure, it's easy when a team is sitting in a room to tangibly feel and see what feels like work getting done and progress, right? And so in order to successfully work remotely, having a model or an approach that gives that same confidence, that gives that same visibility to velocity and work getting done, et cetera, I think is important. And even maybe even a little bit of structure, right? The morning coffee or stand up, the midday lunch touch point, the afternoon happy hour, or whatever you call it, right? The 2-hour programming sessions in between, right? Those kinds of things where there's just a little bit of structure to the squad team that's remote can add and give that confidence and visibility to not only the team members, but the leaders that the work is continuing to happen effectively, right? So I think there's some things, and that makes it kind of fun. The morning coffee is kind of fun, right? And so find your own morning coffee, your own midday touch point, your own afternoon happy hour, whatever that is for your teams, that gives them structure and a bit of a model that enable remote to be successful, frankly, right? And to still give the visibility and confidence that real work is being done to the leaders, right, who are helping fund and making those funding decisions, et cetera. So.
And I will add just a small little thing, but we have quite a large leadership team. So it's very difficult for us to do a very productive stand-up. So we do asynchronous stand-ups, and it's nice. Everyone gets to see a little view of what everyone is doing for the day. What's your plan? How are you feeling? What did you do since yesterday? What are you going to do till tomorrow? And do you need any help? And we have it automated out through Slack, and it works well. It's not your only form of communication with each other, but if you have a large, like more leadership type team that are not all, they're all working on different areas, but you kind of want to know what you're all working on, an asynchronous stand-up is a good one.
Fantastic. Thank you all. We are now 2 minutes out at the end of our webinar. So thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you to our panelists. A quick reminder that if you have any further questions, you can reach out via email. You will have an email pop into your inbox tomorrow with a recording of today's session, so you can reply directly there. Thank you again, and have a nice afternoon, morning, evening to everyone who tuned in across the globe today.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Alex.
Thanks, folks.
Bye. Thanks, people, for joining.